So, picture this, a community that seems almost frozen in time, and then, all of a sudden, it's face-to-face with the unstoppable force of the 20th century. Today, we're going to get into the incredible story of Mexico's Mennonite colonies. These are people who found themselves caught right between their deeply held faith and the relentless march of progress.
Okay, let's dive right in, because this says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the horse-drawn carriage. It's a symbol of a life that's slow, deliberate, centered on faith. And on the other side, the automobile. It represents speed, connection, a whole world of new possibilities, but also, new temptations. This single contrast right here is the absolute heart of the conflict that was about to change everything for them. You see, before the 1960s, the Mennonite colonies in Mexico were, by design, a world apart. Life really revolved around just three things: family, hard work, and an unwavering faith. The whole idea was to be insulated from all the influences of modern Mexico.
And then, well, the outside world literally paved its way right to their doorstep. As Mexico modernized, new roads started cutting through the desert, connecting these once isolated colonies. And just like that, cars began showing up, replacing carriages, and power lines started stretching across the landscape. They brought a new kind of light for sure, but also a whole new set of problems.
But here's where the perspective is everything. To the Mexican government, to the outside world, this was all just progress, development. But inside the colonies, these changes weren't seen as simple improvements at all. No, they were seen as the start of a deep, profound spiritual crisis. So this crisis of progress, it sparked this massive division, but not with outsiders. The division was within the community itself. The question of what the future should look like split families, friends, neighbors. It really pitted one generation against the other.
And this slide really lays out the two sides perfectly. You had the elders who saw the modern world with its radios, its different languages, its temptations as a direct threat to their entire way of life. But the younger generation, they saw opportunity. They were looking beyond the colony, and they felt this pull to learn, to trade, and to see what else the world had to offer.
And it all boiled down to this one single haunting question. This wasn't just a debate about getting a new tractor or telephone. It was a debate about their very identity. How much of the new world can you let in before you stop being who you are? That question was echoing through every single home. And the questions just started coming, relentlessly. First, a practical one. Should we allow electricity into our homes? It sounds simple, right? But they knew it was a Trojan horse. They knew it would bring radios and then televisions and all these worldly influences right into the heart of the family.
Okay, what about automobiles? A car could definitely help on the farm, no doubt. But it was also a vehicle for escape, a way for a young person to just drive off to the city, far away from the community and all of its values.
And it wasn't just about technology either. What about language? Should our children learn English or Spanish? A new language is a great tool for business, sure, but it's also a gateway to a totally different culture, a new way of thinking that could erode their own. And finally, what about the very airwaves themselves? Should they listen to the radio? This was a direct line to the outside world, piping in its music, its news, its ideas, totally unfiltered. Every single one of these questions was a battleground for the soul of their community.
So, faced with this onslaught of impossible questions and no easy answers, the community it couldn't hold together. It fractured. Instead of finding one path forward, three very distinct paths emerged from the chaos.
So here's what happened. The community split into three basic groups. First, you had those who chose to stay and preserve. They doubled down on the old ways, rejecting any and all compromise. Then you had a group that chose to adapt. They formed new, more moderate communities, trying to find a balance between their faith and modernity. And finally, a third group felt they had no choice but to leave and explore entirely new lives. And that third path, the one of leaving, created a whole new diaspora. Think about it. These weren't people fleeing persecution or war. They were fleeing an internal crisis. They packed up their belongings and moved, some north to Canada, others south to Belize and Paraguay, all of them searching for a place where they could define their own balance of freedom and faith. And it's so important to get this. This migration was completely unique. It wasn't driven by famine or poverty. It was a movement born from a desire for a different kind of freedom, the freedom to choose how to live out your faith in a world that wouldn't stop changing.
But here's the amazing part.
Even as the community splintered and spread all across the Americas, this powerful, invisible bond remained, a connection to the land and to each other that distance just could not break.
Because, despite all the disagreements about cars and electricity and radios, the absolute core tenets of their identity held firm. That deep bond to family, the absolute commitment to helping one another, and that shared foundation of faith, those things never, ever wavered.
And you could literally see this bond in action. People who had moved thousands of miles away to Canada or Belize, they would make that long journey all the way back to their original colonies in Mexico for the most important moments in life: weddings, funerals, holidays. The pull of home was just that strong.
There's a German word that captures this feeling perfectly: Heimat. It doesn't just mean homeland. It's so much deeper than that. It's that profound sense of belonging, a connection to a place, its people, its spirit. Something they found between the dust and the sun of the Mexican desert. And that was the one thing that progress, with all its power, could never, ever replace.
So it really leaves us with a final thought for all of us. In our own lives, as technology and the world just change at this dizzying pace, what's our Heimat? What's that essential part of us, of our community or our family, that progress simply cannot and maybe should not ever replace?